All right, everybody, Dave here, Stance Everything, and we're back in the garage, and this video is going to be a little bit of deja vu because we are going to talk once again about Unilug wheels. So I'm here in the garage test fitting my new widened fender. A video on that will be up shortly, and I thought I would talk about the Unilug Astro Supreme wheels again because I had a little bit of feedback on my last video that I got everything I talked about wrong, and if you know me, I don't want to put out false information. So let's take this wheel off and talk about what's going on. All right, let's do this one more time where we talk about Unilug wheels. Unilug wheels have an oval opening that allows them to adapt to multiple different bolt patterns. We have the GM bolt pattern and we have the Ford bolt pattern. And the oval wheel lug openings allow these wheels to fit both bolt patterns without having to be two different wheels that you have to buy for each. It's a pretty ingenious way of accomplishing both, but some people don't like it because it does allow for a little bit of discrepancy, obviously, because you make up the difference for the bolt patterns with the lug nuts, which is exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. This is your standard wheel lug. There is no shank on this wheel lug, and you can't use these in a Unilug wheel. This right here is a wheel lug with a shank on it. You can see that the shank starts here and extends through here. If you compare the two, it's pretty obvious the difference. Shank, no shank. One comment said that I absolutely had to use a shanked wheel nut. And I totally agree, which is why I was using these wheel nuts, which do have a shank on them. All right, now that we've explained the difference between a non-shanked wheel nut and a shanked wheel nut, I'm going to show you the importance of why you need a shanked wheel nut for an Astro Supreme Unilug wheel. This shank goes through the lug nut here and into the wheel to take up the space between the end of the lug and the end of the wheel face here. I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm exactly talking about. Without the extra shank piece, this would just be sitting on the top, and as mentioned in one of the comments, that would be extremely dangerous. This is a non-shanked wheel nut. If I put this on the face of the wheel, you can see that it doesn't protrude through into the back of the wheel, which means the lug would be supporting the wheel entirely. And with this space here, that's too much for a lug nut to support. So with a shanked wheel nut, it goes in. You can see now that I do have an engagement here with the wheel nut and the lug nut hole here that will provide a much better support system. However, the shank alone isn't going to give you the engagement you need to be safe, which is where these washers come in. The washers sit on the wheel face. The shanked lug nut goes through the washer and into the wheel, and that is what tightens the wheel down. Lug nut tightens the washer, which holds it onto the wheel. The shank engages the shoulders here of the Unilug, and it keeps everything straight. I was told that I was doing it incorrectly. This style of wheel does predate me, but like I said, I did a lot of research and this appears to be the correct way to do it. Another comment I had was that for Unilug wheels, a washer is supposed to sit in an indent in the lug. There is no indent. You can see that all wheel lug hole openings, no indentation, which means that this washer here is not going to fit in an indent that doesn't exist. There's no indent here. So for this style of Unilug, the washer sits on top. Now that we've gone over the difference between a shanked wheel nut and a non-shanked wheel nut, I wanted to address a comment that said that the seat of this lug nut and this washer were incompatible. Now, maybe it's supposed to be completely flush and flat. That is totally a possibility. I ran this combo last year and did not have a single issue on the street. However, I'm not running this combo this year. It actually isn't because of the seat. It's more of a vanity thing. But let me show you what I'm going to be running this year. So for this year, I'm going to be running these wheel nuts. It's a combo made by a company who actually I'm not 100% sure who they are. Ended up picking this up off of Marketplace, and the reason I'm running it is actually incredibly vain. One issue I did have with this combo was I could not for the life of me while tightening the wheels keep these things from spinning around, and I hated looking at my wheel with these all at a different angle, and I didn't want to spend the time because anytime I was taking my wheel on and off, I wanted to get rolling really quickly to try and keep these all centered and on the same angle while doing it up to torque spec. Bit of a nightmare. So I decided to try something new, which was these wheels and lugs. As you can see, most of them are on the truck already. The key differences between these guys are that they still do have a shank. You'll notice that they do not have a conical seat anymore, and the shank is actually a little bit longer. It doesn't interfere with my hub, fortunately, and everything does actually seem to work. So what happens with this one is shank goes through the wheel, sits on this washer. Unfortunately, they're not quite as polished as these ones. These ones are Magard, and this one is a different brand, but I think it should ultimately be fine. And I'm going to show you on the wheel just to show that everything does work as expected. This is the new setup that I'm going to be running with the longer shank and the washer. You put it through here, and you can see that there is nice engagement through the wheel. And I think perhaps that's what people were worried about, that I didn't have enough engagement. But again, I did have a lug nut with a shank. It was just a shorter shank than my new lug nuts. Another comment I received is that you can't balance these wheels because they're not hub centric. I think what that commenter meant to say is you can't balance these wheels because they're not lug centric, because obviously these lugs have some space in them. But I did get them balanced. You can actually see wheel weights in there. And simply what they did was they put the right adapter in the hub here and balanced it up. Last year I had no wheel weights. This year I have wheel weights. I didn't feel any vibrations from the rear last year. I did get some from the front. I don't have an alignment, so I'm hoping it actually runs a little bit better. All right, let's bolt up this wheel with the new lug nuts and spacers. I'm just gonna do 2 for the sake of argument here, because this wheel is coming on and off. So I've got my new lug nuts and my new spacers here. Again, I'm just doing 2 to speed up the process of test fitting this fender. I don't need to get them all torqued down right now. Lug nut, washer, goes into on the lug, obviously. Center it onto that opening. Tighten it up a little bit. And then what I like to do is toss on another one. I've got the new lugs on. Shank has gone through the wheel nut here, and then I have the washer on the face of the wheel. I have not done the other lugs, which is why they look off center, and that's the thing again with Unilug wheels. If I wanted to center this lug in the hole, I'd actually loosen these 2 up, push the wheel a little bit, put the lug and the washer through, and get them all centered up. And that's how this system works. Was originally just gonna do 2, but I'm actually gonna do all 5 just to show you that everything works. But I did want to show you something that is what makes these Unilug wheels a little bit tricky when you're mounting them. You can see that I have 2 in here now, and I've kind of tightened them, not fully. And a lug nut won't go in this now, because if I was to put it on, the stud is not centered in the hole. That's what makes the Unilug wheels a little trickier, and probably actually better explains the whole Unilug concept more than anything else. You can see that that is a little bit more centered, whereas that isn't centered. To fix that, I've got to loosen these 2 and then jam the rest in there. So let me just do that now. Okay, now that I've loosened these 2, I can get this a bit more centered. So I will get everything ready with the lug nut on the washer. I'll start to thread it just a little bit so I don't have to hold the lug, and then I'll push up on the wheel. And you see that movement there? That's what I'm doing to get everything centered. And I can feel it now. I can feel it going through the hole in the wheel. So then I'll let go. Grab my next combo. Do the same thing again on this one. So it's engaging now. Have one more to do. Combo. It's pretty much dead center now that I've got 4 of the 5 done. You just put that on there. Okay, and then now what I would do would be to tighten the rest of the lug nuts as usual. Now to me, these look way better than the other ones that I had before, and in the event that I was wrong in the last video, these longer shanks should provide me a level of safety that perhaps didn't exist before. As I mentioned last year, I didn't have any issues driving with the wheel lug and washer combo that I had, and I am actually going to save that wheel lug and combo just in the event that maybe this one isn't right, but I think this one will be right, and I think it will definitely address some of the comments that you guys had in my previous video. Like I said, I don't want to put out any misinformation, which is why I came back and revisited this entire setup. Now, I'm going to get back to welding this fender, which is going to be my next video, which will hopefully be out next week. And if you like this video, definitely let me know in the comments. And like I said, if I'm wrong, let me know again. We'll catch you in the next one.